Welcome back, guys, to part two of the podcast, and we're just going to continue with the Q&A straight into question three. So, what are some of the trends in hiring for cyber you have seen in the last 7 years, and what is current right now?
I think one of the main things is that there's been since COVID, a lot of organizations have gone remote. So in the process of going remote, a lot more is cloud hosted application, cloud hosted servers. So therefore network security and cloud security is definitely very much more important. A lot of organizations are now looking at certifications as well. So it's also a case of, that's two pronged. So you've got a situation whereby employers want to have the advisory side of it. So maybe they're not sure 100% about what they need to do. So they need someone to come in on the governance, risk and compliance side to just understand their business, understand how, all of their systems and their processes, and see if they are fit for purpose. So I think that there's been an uptake, and there will continue to be an uptake in GRC services and GRC candidates. I think at the other end, you've also got a lot more requirement for certifications, although I think that's now starting to subside. I think the trends of having people, heavily certified, I think has become detrimental, because people or employers are beginning to realize while some candidates might be very strong in terms of certs, are their skills up to the scratch? So I think the employers are now getting more and more savvy to try and understand, okay, is the cert that important, or is it more important to them have the skill, and then we will pay for their certs once they're employed? A lot of employers are going down that route, whereby they'll help you to get the certifications. In terms of diversity and inclusion, although it's still quite poor in the industry, I think there's initiatives now to try and push this, and to try and get more people of color, more women in the industry, and also those that have got backgrounds with such as they're sort of on the spectrum with neurodiverse. I think, to be fair, this is probably one of the industries which has got a higher proportion of neurodiverse individuals as compared to other ones. But at the same time, there's only something like 17% women in the industry, which is appalling. So it's got a long way to improve, and I think companies are now beginning to recognize that. So I think that's going to be part of the hiring trends in the future. People will look more at that. I think in terms of the other skills, I think what was ignored in the past were things like the impact skills, such as communication, leadership, problem solving, the ability to communicate. These sort of emotional intelligence, ability to manage stakeholders and client relationship management skills. I think all of these sort of things are now becoming more and more relevant. And again, moving forward, I think these are the kind of skills that are going to be needed within the employment base. So again, jobs are going to be looking for people who are a bit more all round than that. So it could be that you're a pen tester, but they want people they will want people that are pen testers, but also have got some additional impact skills that they can bring to the table. I think gone are the days whereby you can just expect to be in a dark room, literally by yourself, don't need to do anything else. I don't think it works like that anymore. Also, some of the other areas that are definitely picking up, generative AI. So it's a very new technology over the last couple of years, especially since ChatGPT exploded a couple of years back. It's now a case of how do we incorporate that into the cyber world? How does it affect the SOC function in terms of the alerts? How does it affect? Automation's always been there in pen testing. Is AI going to change that? The use of chatbots in a lot of businesses now. You see them on their websites that you can chat to a chatbot, and all of this has an impact. So the things that I do believe is that GRC, threat intelligence, and cloud security and network security are going to become more and more important. But the soft skills, or the impact skills, are also going to be extremely important for employers. So you need to sort of try and fit yourself, or try to show that you've got additional skills, and it's not just those technical skills that you've got. You need to have added value, as we call it. I hope that answers.
Thank you very much. It does indeed. Thank you for giving such detailed answers. Now, moving on to question 4. During the initial hiring interview, what factors may lead to the conclusion that a candidate is not a good fit for a particular role?
That's a very good question, and I think it's not a one size fits all answer, but I'll try to go into as much detail on this as possible. The first and the main reason why people are not successful in an interview is because they don't prepare. The number of times, and I can predict it, if a candidate doesn't let me give them help on an interview, I know they're never going to be any good, because what happens is that they don't prepare properly. Preparation means you research the company, you research the hiring manager, you research the person who's going to interview you. You put together some questions that you need to ask them about the business, about the team, about the role, about the future, about the opportunities for professional development, about the opportunity for career development. It requires you to do research on the company. What is their plans for the future? How do they, if it's a direct hiring manager that's interviewing, you need to ask them maybe some technical questions about the tools that they use or the technology that they use. You need to make sure that the hiring manager thinks that you are competent at what you're going to do, and that you're inquisitive enough that you're actually showing genuine interest in the company. And that's why you need to do your research and demonstrate that you've done your research, because otherwise, at the end of the day, the hiring manager is going to sit there and think, do you know what? What is the purpose of this interview? The person's not done any research on us. They're not communicating very effectively. They clearly don't really know what they're on about, and they're not the right fit. So as a result, it won't go any further. So you need to be, the first thing is make sure you're properly prepared. Make sure you've got those questions that you want to ask to hand, and also make sure that you've researched the company, their values, their culture. Reach out to not just the hiring manager, but reach out to people in the team to find out about the culture there. If it's not the right culture for you, then you can always decline an interview. But what you don't want to be doing is going to an interview and then finding out that the culture is not right. You can save yourself time and the employer time by engaging with people who work already there and seeing what their thoughts are. You need to show some enthusiasm and motivation about the role and about the company, and be genuinely interested. One of the worst things that I've always found is, and I've sat on a lot of interviews, is when somebody is really got no passion. They're very deadpan. No, they're not really demonstrating any life in them. You want to have someone with a bit of personality and character, and you want to know that, I'm hiring somebody who's not just going to be this 9-to-5 person, that I can interact with them, that I feel comfortable with them, that I can engage with them. And I think this is becoming more and more important. So I think that whole piece around cultural fit and understanding what the company is like is really, really vital prior to going into an interview. So I would do all your research. And then the other thing that's really important, I think I touched on it earlier, is communication. Being able to articulate and communicate yourself really well. And one of the things that I've recently seen is that some employers are giving the questions to candidates beforehand, what they're going to ask. I think that's a really good thing, because it saves everybody time. The candidate can go off and do their research. If they're neurodivergent, it means that they won't feel as pressured in the interview. But neither will anyone else. You've got the questions. Go away and do your research, and make sure that you can provide solid answers to everything that they're going to ask. And I think this is really, I would advocate this should be the future of recruitment. Of all companies, they should provide this level of sort of giving the questions beforehand and giving the candidate time to prepare. It would turn the process into a 2-stage process: a screening call and then a more in-depth technical call. And if you needed to do a technical test, you could do that. But at the end of the day, I think this would be sufficient and really help in streamlining the process. I hope that gives you a good overview of why some candidates get rejected at interview.
It sure does, and I think that message can be echoed throughout anything in life. Preparation is key for anything you undertake. So, if you're not willing to prepare for a job interview, you aren't going to succeed. Similarly, when you have an exam at university or school, if you don't prepare, you're sort of winging it then.
It doesn't work. I can tell you now, as a recruiter, you can instantly realize who the people are that are going to do well and who the people are that aren't. And generally, it's the ones that say we don't need any help, we're going to do it ourselves. They're the ones who don't go off and do any research, and they really don't tend to fare very well in an interview.
Thank you for that. And moving on to our second to last question. What should candidates expect in a technical security interview? And are there any extra things candidates can do to really showcase their passion for technology?
I'm going to focus on people who are entry level here, because I think someone who's experienced would already know what they're talking about and they wouldn't really need any help on this. So if we focus on entry level people trying to break in, getting an interview for an entry level role, what I think that they need to demonstrate, and in terms of I couldn't tell them specific technical questions, but what I can say is go back and do a whole load of CTS, try hack me, hack the box, the challenges related to that job, so that you can then have a list of completed rooms that you've done that match what the role is going to be about, because you can then go off and then talk about those simulations that you've done that replicate real life. And also the other advantage of doing that is it actually demonstrates that you've understood what the job function is and gone away, and you've also done some challenges within that space to make sure that you're ready and prepared for it. Also read around. I mean, if it's a web app testing, then read around, or what is web app testing? Read around what could come in, what sort of questions could go in. So the other thing you can do is you can ask AI what kind of questions would come up in, and put the job spec in there and ask it to give you, the 4 or 5 solid technical questions to prepare for the interview. Also, I think it's very important to know about current threats. So it doesn't matter what job function you're doing, it's important to know what the space overall is about outside. So it could be that you just do a little bit of research on that as well, and somehow weave that into the conversation with them, just to show your knowledge and demonstrate that, yes, while I might be a pen tester, I can understand what threats are out there, and that will also help you. Also, make sure that if you've got projects that you've worked on in the past that are related to, let's say, pen testing, if that's the role, then you need to highlight those projects that you've worked on and talk about them, and be able to talk about them on a granular level. So right from the tools that you've used through to the what was the challenge that you faced, how did you overcome it, what vulnerabilities did you find, how easy it was, what was the report that you wrote at the end, what was it like, etc., etc. You go into it on a granular level so that they know that this person understands from point A to point Z what is a pen test and how does it work. And the same could go for something like a GRC type scenario. If you're a GRC consultant, sitting down and understanding client requirements first, and then relating that back into going through the whole process of testing the various controls related back to what they are. You can demonstrate this by, and sit down and build a list of questions from the actual job spec that would be related back to what you would do. So again, it all boils down to preparation and actually going back understanding what the requirements are, and building your answers and questions based around that, and making sure you can demonstrate. Although if you're entry level, you're not going to have any commercial experience, but what you can then demonstrate is the projects you worked on, the try happy's, the the box, the CTS, the bug bounty that you might have done, which can then demonstrate you have an application, you applied the book knowledge that you've got from the certs. And I think this is really, really important. And one other thing I would definitely recommend before you go in an interview, once you've got the details of the job spec and you're told that you're through to the technical interview, I'd make sure I go on to ChatGPT and get it to build you a list of 5 or 6 technical questions, and I'd make sure that you can answer them all, because based on the job spec, I think that's vital preparation. Because at the end of the day, there's only so many questions someone can ask about a web app testing role or an infrastructure testing role, or an aspect of a SOC role or a GRC. There's only certain, as an entry level person, it's not really going to be based on your practical knowledge. It's going to be, some of it's going to be about your knowledge in general about the sector and about the tools. And it's going to be based around the projects that you'll have done in that area. So that's what you need to demonstrate. I hope that gives you a good overview.
Thank you. And I wanted to add to that. I'm not sure if you'll agree or not, but adding things such as your links to your GitHub. You mentioned this early in CV. It will add to your entire persona. I don't know if persona is the right word, but it will add to you as an individual.
Absolutely, I'd agree with that. Absolutely, 100%. They should be able to showcase their links. Just be careful. There's some people, what they do is they will, to demonstrate they can code, they will go off to GitHub. They will get ChatGPT to write them some code, and they will put it into there. Don't do that. If you can't code, don't pretend you can. Make sure that all the information is factually correct and done by you, because you'll only get caught out further down the line. It's just pointless. In an interview, you'll look very, very stupid. So you're absolutely right. Use those links to showcase who you are, what you're about, and what your capability is. Without any doubt, I would 100% agree with you, Shams. Yes, do that for sure.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our final question. Are there any overlooked skills or qualities by candidates that are important to hiring managers? And if so, what are they?
I think the impact skills are very much overlooked. So the ability to communicate, I think this is a more and more vital skill than anything, because it doesn't matter, you could be the best technical person in the world. If you can't understand what the client or from what the stakeholders are telling you, and you can't then explain to them what remediation needs to take place, or you can't explain to them what you're doing and you need to do, then it doesn't matter if you're the best tester in the world. There's no use for you in that organization. So you need to be able to communicate confidently with the stakeholders, with the clients, with your managers. So that is a very, very much a quality and a skill that's desperately needed in the industry. They need people who can work under pressure. So there's going to be times where you're up on a deadline and you really need to get the work done. So they need people that are confident at getting the work done and that are well organized. So they're not just leaving it to last minute and doing it right at the end, where they do it through, in good time, but can work under pressure. I think it's really important. And I think this is where a lot of people add value. Problem solving, it's massive, where you don't just look at the problem, you look at solutions. Really, really important and really vital to be able to help, whether it's a client, whether it's internal, be able to solve problems, to be able to work within a team and be collaborative. This is probably, in this industry, again, it can be a bit of a challenge because people tend to hold things to themselves. They like to be insular and they don't like to share and collaborate. Whereas in reality, the best work and the best teams are those that collaborate with each other and they work together to solve problems. So absolutely think that is one thing that people really need to look at is how do we ensure that we can communicate? How do we then make sure we can work together as a team? I think some of the other skills, such as emotional intelligence, it's becoming bigger and bigger, because those people who are emotionally intelligent, they can actually understand the person in front of them, and then mold their own behavior and what they do based around that other person. And I think that's vital, because that shows sensitivity to the other person. It shows a sensible and mature approach. So I think that for sure, those are really, really important skills. But I think also you need to have an understanding of the future. So it's not just about where you are now. You also need to keep your eye on the future, and what skills are going to be relevant in the future. Generative AI, the use of technology, the all of that space is going to remain very important and key to keeping yourself relevant in the future. So look down in the future and keep your eye and the pulse on the future, so that you make sure that what skills are needed now might not be the same in 5 years' time. So you need to keep your eye on the ball to make sure that you remain relevant, whether it's now or in 5 years' time. And to do that, you need to interact with people. You need to make sure that you develop strong relationships with people in the industry, so that you can bounce ideas off each other, and you can gain exposure and an understanding of the industry from some more senior professionals. So I would definitely recommend entry-level people go out and make some connections with senior people, so that they can learn from them, and they can keep abreast of what's going on in the industry and where it's headed. So I think that's really important. And I think one last point in and around the whole idea of overlooked skills and qualities important for hiring managers. I think by going onto LinkedIn and looking at that hiring manager, if they're active on LinkedIn, you'll be able to understand what things they're looking for from their posts and from their profile. And I think it's really important to be able to go and do that, because what it will do is, it will help you to understand the person that's going to interview you much better, and B, it means that you can actually modify yourself and how you approach the interview much better, because you know more about that person than by not doing it. So therefore, I think you can also see from there what skills will be important to that person. Just if they are active on LinkedIn. If they're not, it's a different story. But if they are, it gives you a deep insight into that person, and it will help you in the interview. Utilize that knowledge carefully.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And that concludes the Q&A section. So I want to thank you, Musa, for your honest and quite detailed answers. And I'm pretty sure every listener tuning into this will really appreciate the effort and time you've gone into discussing the questions that were sent in.
Thank you very much for having me, Shams. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope people benefit from the insight that I've given. I've tried to be as detailed as I can, because I think it's important to try and help people, and I genuinely hope that this has brought some benefit to your listeners.
Thank you very much. And before we conclude today's episode, I want to ask if there's any sort of wisdom you want to share with our listeners, or final piece of, little words of wisdom.
Yeah, I would say cybersecurity isn't easy to break into. It's not simple as clicking your fingers and you're in. It's a tough market to break. To do it, you need to have a multi-pronged strategy. One will be getting your CV right, but more important than that, and 70% of it is actually doing having a strategy for LinkedIn, creating a profile, creating a persona, and creating a voice and a brand on LinkedIn that people can identify with. So that's what I would work on. I'd spend most of your time doing that, and then getting a base CV together, and then modifying it as every single role you apply for, making sure it's relevant for that role. But then using LinkedIn as your solid strategy for developing relationships and getting yourself noticed. I have a little saying. With LinkedIn, it's very simple. Visibility leads to credibility, leads to opportunity.
Well, thank you very much for leaving us with that. And again, everything we've discussed, I'll post links in down below, so don't worry about that. And if you have any suggestions or which sort of guests you want next, or any names, in fact, please do let me know. Contact us. And, if you have any feedback, that's also greatly appreciated. And please bear with me if the editing of this podcast is a bit all over the place, but I'm giving it a go. But other than that, take care of yourself, and until the next one, take care. Early in cyber, where knowledge meets inspiration.